A great scientific experiment begins.
Try another frequency. What is it? Something's jamming the wavelengths.
Bernard Lietaer. I'm currently teaching at the Sorbonne in France. So I started off with classic, Greek Latin. Then I did a degree in in mathematics. Okay, because I didn't have enough math to go into engineering. I thought engineering was the way to actually do action on the real world, right? But by the time I had finished engineering, I found out that it's not engineering that actually engineers that make the decisions. It's business people that use engineers to implement whatever they want to do. So, and I went to the States to do that. So that's how the sequence was. So there's no contradiction. There was no contradiction in that sense. There's just, it doesn't look classical, that I admit, okay? And it's certainly not the straightest path from A to B. I also admit that very easily. But there was a logic built in, which I wasn't aware of, by the way. It wasn't a strategic decision on mine that saying, gee whiz, let's do this. I made the decisions at the time that it looked best to my mind at that time. What can I do? Okay. But it turned out to have that pattern. The turning point had been when I actually, this is in pre-hippie days, by the way, we're talking the early 60s. I've been, since the age of 14, I've been hitchhiking every summer to discover first neighboring countries, and then Europe, and then the Middle East, and then India. And it is in India that actually the shock came, that I first became aware of what it is to be a Westerner, and to accept that. Well, in the Indian terminology, my path is one of karma yoga, the path of action. So that's when I decided to first of all do engineering. Engineering action has to do with reality, not philosophy, okay? Or meditation, or whatever else. There are many other paths that are perfectly respectable, but that's the way. I also thought that when you live in the Roman Empire, you better find out what Rome looks like and how Rome works. And we're living in the American Empire, in Europe. So let's find out how America ticks. The key to each region is different. The key to India is religion, actually. The key to America is business. If you don't understand business, you won't understand America. So I went to America, studied business, and the fastest way to experience a variety of different fields on how institutions work is consulting. You start working in a bank, it will take you 10, 15 years before you know what banks do. But the consulting thing, you start at the top level. In a year you have 4 or 5 industries. Okay? So I took consulting for that purpose, because it was the fastest way to understand how universities work. I did reorganizations in universities, I did compensation systems in the largest chemical companies, a merger between oil companies, we did all kinds of things. Mining sector, banks, we did a whole range of activities, and so that's why I actually chose that way. The thing that I was not aware of at the time, and only became aware of it in the early 90s, was was revealed to me by the only mentor I ever had, who is Willis Harman, the founder of the Institute for Nomadic Sciences in California, the Institute for the Science of Consciousness. Okay, he told me, Bernard, you have been trained for 25 years to understand money like nobody ever had. because you've been in situations that are typically mutually exclusive. I still believe I'm the only ex-central banker who actually has been managing offshore currency funds. Okay, that doesn't happen in my life. Okay, I've been an academic, and I've been the president of electronic payment systems. That's very different realities, all related. I've been working with some of the largest multinationals on the planet, and I've been working with developing countries. So these are all, and the common denominator of all these things happens to have been the money systems. So I decided to accept that challenge, to write down what I had learned, because he said it would be useful for the others. Okay. I thought I had planned to invest 3 years. That's over 20 years ago. I can't get rid of the topic. They pursue me. It follows me. As soon as I say, all right, finish that one, something happens, like a major crash, like 2007 today, and they say, wait a minute here, not finished here, okay? So I can't get rid of the topic. I'm perfectly happy to give it to some other people, by the way. That's why I write books, because books is a good way of getting rid of a topic for me. That other people start worrying about it rather than me. Gifting stuff exists prehistoric times. I mean, actually, that there are stuff discovered from 40,000 years ago in Africa, and, where gift exchanges were occurring from eggshells that were a little bit beautified, and so that exists. However, that's not the same thing as barter. Okay. Yeah. Barter would be at the same time I give you a gift and you give me one. Okay? Okay? If you have a simultaneous exchange, that's barter. That's not the way economy started. There's a very good work done by Michael Hudson, and by Graeber, called Debt, the First 5,000 Years. And he has convinced me, they both have convinced me that in fact the barter is not, it's one of the mythologies that have been developed in economics to give some historical perspective on it, but it's in fact not true. That's not the way things have started. The gift exchange is actually when I give you something and you owe me something, but you don't cancel it off now. Okay? So I have a credit with you, ethical credit, relationship credit, so that you will feel uncomfortable if I need something to refuse it. And this could become very important, in relatively primitive societies. It can be a question of survival, right? If I don't have a glass of water now and you happen to have some, that's it. Or you have fire and I don't, okay? That can make a big difference in life, right? So these, the gift exchange is actually not an exchange. There is a counter gift that's left open. Okay? While a commercial transaction, actually, when I finish buying something, there is nothing is owed me, and we're clean. There is no relationship built up. Well, the best work done on the gift economy and the gift mechanism is by Mauss, who was a French anthropologist back in the 1920s and 30s. He created a theory of the gift. And his approach is, when you make an exchange, there's actually, when I make you a gift, there is a counter gift that is not manifesting. There's an imbalance between the two. And in that imbalance, that actually makes an investment from my side that you may be more positively oriented towards me in the future. And therefore, in the future, there will be something happening. In the mutual credit system, the difference is that there are two aspects. In the mutual credit system, I am not indebting me to you. It's not an individual process. It's a process toward a community that uses that currency. Okay? If I give you a gift, that doesn't mean that your brother owes me. Okay? Even your brother, okay? You may have to have a conversation with him to convince him that there is something there. But it is not automatic. Which is well the case in a mutual credit system. It's not a commitment between the two of us. So that's the first thing. Okay? And the second thing is the credit is given now. Okay? In other words, I do have, it is completed now between us. Okay? And I can get back from other people in the community. That's not the way it is in a gift mechanism. So that's the differences. The commonality is that they're both yin processes. They're both processes to create relationships and strengthen them. But there's relationships with two different types of environments. One is more individual, the other one is more collective. In my language, mutual credit systems are a pure yin system.
Pure?
Yin, the yin-yang concept from Taoist philosophy, which is actually prehistoric shamanism back in China and Siberia. So it's a very, very old concept. And this is actually the best description, the best language I've found so far to be able to describe these concepts of the different dynamics between systems. And it also explains the complementarity. A yang system, which is hierarchical, controlling, more masculine if you want, needs a balanced activity from a yin system. One separate is always wrong. You always need a dynamic between the two. This is a very deep philosophical concept, by the way, which you've been able to prove scientifically for the first time to be actually valid as a way of describing living systems. Living systems are not the way Aristotle taught us. Cause and effect. The cause and effect. The entire Western science has been built on the concept of cause and effect, which requires then automatically to go to the primordial cause. What is the cause of the cause of the cause? And that's why we need a God, okay, to create things, or a big bang in science to actually start the system. You need something unusual at the beginning, which is the primordial cause. Not the case in Taoism. Out of the void, you have the creation of polarity. You have the creation of two instead of zero. You have 0 to 2, you don't go 1. And it is the interaction between these polarities that creates reality. And our work we've been doing with Ulanovich on complex flow systems, and a lot of things are complex flow systems, by the way, including living systems, including our nervous system, including our blood circulation, including an economy, and including a natural ecosystem. All these things have that in common. We actually found out that that's the way it works. It is not starting from a causal thing. It's starting from an interaction between two poles. Complementary currencies is the generic term for the whole world of any kind of medium of exchange that's standardized, that's other than conventional money. That includes commercial stuff, things like the miles or the loyalty systems from supermarkets, okay? Has no intention of any other type of stuff than making you behave in a particular way that's beneficial to the company that issues them. It also goes all the way from local initiatives, like say time banking, okay, all the way to a global currency, the Terra, okay? So that's a full range. They all complement conventional money. Good. Now, among the subsets in there, you do have mutual credit systems. Mutual credit systems is where the currency is created between the users at the moment of the transaction. Okay? I do something for you now for 2 hours. I have a credit, you have a debit. If I were doing something back, if you were doing something back for me for 2 hours, it would just be barter. Okay. However, if my credit is accepted by someone else and you can do something for a fourth person, we actually have created a currency between us. So it is a currency that's always in sufficiency. The exact quantity of money is always available. If we have an agreement to do something, we have the currency. Now, in the case of the Toricus, the city is involved, and the city is the issuer. So it is not created between the users, it's created by an authority, okay, which is actually managing the system for the users and actually has set up a bunch of criteria for obtaining that particular currency. Okay? So the structure is different. One is a star in the center with issuing, and then you can use it. There's a secondary exchange possibly between the users, but they can't create it. While in the mutual credit system they create it. I found interesting in the STRO case, which is the organization you're referring to. Initially they were not involved in money issues at all. They were an ecological group, like there were many in the 70s and the 80s. Literally, the entire green movement started in that period, and there were literally hundreds, if not to say thousands, of organizations focusing on this stuff. What is original about them is they tackled it systemically rather than symptomatically. Most of our efforts in many domains, including the ecological field, is that we tend to address only symptoms. Oh, people are poor. Let's give them some money. Trees are being cut down. Well, let's introduce a law that they shouldn't do it. Or something. I mean, symptom alleviation. They were systemic thinkers. That's the big difference. And simply on analyzing the ecological field and what's going on, they came to the conclusion that the root mechanism, the systemic cause, happens to be money. Okay? And that's why they developed this software and started acting in that field. So that's what's original about them. They're systemic ecologists who've gotten into money not because of that money issue, but because they identified correctly, in my view, that's the driver. That's what makes us do a bunch of stupid things that are not good for us individually or collectively in the long term. I decided not to talk much about it because it's a media bubble. I got more interview requests about Bitcoin than about everything else, ever. And and to me, it's a false flag. Okay. So anyway, by the way, the architecture is important and interesting, and I'm planning to use it. Actually, they're currently involved in a project for the EU to develop management tools for grassroots groups, including a currency, hence the reason I'm involved. But not only that, also decision making, governance, and stuff like that. And I'm planning to use the Bitcoin architecture. Okay, the architecture is interesting. But the currency has just been focusing on two features of conventional money, which happen to be negative for society in general, or for a currency in particular. Okay, the fact that it's a speculation tool and not really a medium of exchange. The rational thing to do with a Bitcoin is to grab a few and sit on them. Okay, that's the thing to do. The last thing to do is to actually start using it on a daily way. Because that is not what's rational with that tool. You could do anything you want. You could also start using painting as a medium of exchange, but it may not be particularly convenient. I do believe in the architecture. I think it's very powerful in other domains than currency as well. So it's much more important than any currency in that field. It's possible to replace a third party, a third independent party in all kinds of things. Escrow accounts in banking, wills, right? I mean, that you need a notary public for now. All these things can be replaced, which is interesting and important. However, the currency itself is not important. There are now over 100 copycats that have been trying to do it because they're driving also on the media bubble, right? That's what they're really interested in. So, by the fact that we have perfected the legislations for the industrial age, there's a whole series of results from reasonable things or lobbying efforts in the past. Okay, the objective in a country was actually to push as many people as quickly as possible in industrial production. That's how England developed. They kicked all the farmers away from their land in order to have a lot of labor available, right? And it worked. Okay, it was cruel, by the way, but today, in fact, structurally, jobs are not going to be part of our future. And it's not, it's run even deeper when we want to start looking at 3D printing and at nanotechnologies, where in fact, you're going to have a phenomenon in industrial production that will mimic what happened in farming. 90% of the population was working in farming a century ago or a century and a half ago. And today it's 2%. And they produce enough for export, all right? So just as it was interesting at the time to have laws that were pushing people away from farms into industry, we still have these three categories, which were the joblessness and volunteers, are very constraining. There's a whole bunch of things you're not supposed to do, including surviving in it. They're kicking you off it as quickly as possible. Well, that is fine if you have jobs at the end, and if it's the lack of will to work that does it. But if there are no jobs available, you're not getting there. You're actually going to build up frustration and violence, instead of productive outcomes. So we need a way of making a living in other ways than trying to do it with euros. As long as we are only focusing on analyzing a problem from a symptomatic level, and that's what the fundamental problem is, not only in the currency field, whatever other domain, the first temptation is when something is a problem, let's fix the symptom. Rather than going up to the systemic level, which requires a level of abstraction and deeper work, that is not necessarily something that people are trained to do, by the way. Even systems theory is not taught very frequently except in engineering. Okay? It should be in sociology, it should be in psychology, it should be, in medicine, That's not what happens. Our entire medical system is dealing with symptoms. Right? So that's where the error is. Now, when you only deal with symptoms, I can guarantee you the problem will not disappear. If you give money to poor people, you will not address poverty. I guarantee you that. Because the system creates the poverty. And if you don't change the system level, you're going to have more poverty. You may solve that particular problem, 500 people, 1,000 people, 1 million people, great. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but don't have an illusion that you solve anything. Because that's where the problem is. And the system of all the systems, the meta system that controls all the other systems, happens to be money. Businesses are controlled by money because that's their objective. Churches are controlled by money. Okay? In other words, education, medicine is not about health, it's about making money. All right? The pharmaceutical industry is definitely not trying to get rid of your symptoms, but not addressing the problem that you're becoming healthy. Health is not an objective. Okay? So that's where the problem is. And the meta system, that's why I'm focusing on money. I'm not focusing on money because I'm somehow obnubilated by it. Or obsessed, whatever word you want to use. I fell into it, and it took me 25 years for someone to tell me that was the common denominator. I didn't know. Right? So that's how I discovered it myself. Right? Now, it is the meta system. We are not going to convince the Chinese to give up consumption. Right? Whatever you do, you're not going to succeed, except if you change the money system that they use. Then you're going to have a system change. Systematically, after the first wave, I wrote some books alone, back in California actually, because it was a request on an individual level. Since that time, I've been holding always co-authorships, both in academic articles and in books, because it increases the number of people who have a competence and credibility to talk about this, other than me, because I definitely can't deal with this one by myself. I have no illusions about that, never did. Okay, this is a huge undertaking, and it will have to continue after I'm long dead. So I have no illusions about that either. That will go quick. Okay, I think it's time to get serious about this. I claim, and we now have enough evidence that this claim is justified, that we can set up amortization systems, shock breakers, that will make the transition. We know, everybody is convinced that there's going to be massive change required, including massive grassroots, common people behavior change. There are only two ways of doing that. Either coercive, okay, and creating a police state, or incentives, motivation systems that make it attractive for doing certain things. We've proven for 40 years that complementary currencies can actually achieve that. And there are large, very large scale systems. Some of the largest payment systems of the planet are actually, involved in, not in dollars, but in such complementary systems of a commercial nature, like the miles that are the classical case. I think it's time that we use these tools that have proven that they can work to shape a future that will work, that is to be compatible with our values. We can create motivation systems that reflect our values, something which conventional money doesn't do. So it actually creates a whole range of new possibilities, of new opportunities. We're either going to have a planetary breakthrough or extraordinarily massive breakdown. And we are going to be choosing now, in the next 10 years. We have 20 years maximum to really change. And if we don't change, it's written down. We know we're going straight in the wall. The risk we're running is that there were a bunch of geniuses 300 years ago that were designing an institutionalization of a particular framework. And we have been using these institutions on automatic pilot. Everybody is doing their job. Central banks are doing their jobs. ExxonMobil is doing its job. The governments are doing their jobs. The parliaments are doing their jobs, and we're walking straight into the wall. Well, let's take our distance from it. Is that where we want to go? And if we don't want to go, why not use information age tools to actually do something? And whether this will work or not doesn't depend on me. It depends on you and everybody else who listens to this. So you have the power to control your future, or let it decide for you. But we know now it's not going to be pretty if we don't change. The reason I'm interested in money is because it's the most powerful leverage tool for large-scale societal change. It's a leverage. Let's use it consciously. That's also why I'm teaching now. I'm going back to teaching in school, in university, and I'm teaching at the Sorbonne now, in the Erasmus Mundus program, and very bright students. And this is a course in the field of sustainability, the master's level. What they tell me, this is a 2-year program. They have, 15 courses per year. I mean, they're talking 30, 40 courses in total. Only one who has mentioned money. Mention it, not to even study it, happens to have been me. That really panics me, frankly.